All right, well, it's 5:05, so I'll go ahead and get started. So this Kahan fellowship is new. It just started a year ago, essentially. We have a donor whom some of you may have heard speak at the Health Law Expo if you went to that, John Kahan. He did both his undergrad and his law degree at GW and is a really devoted alum who has been involved in, he and I served on the faculty hiring committee. I'm not faculty hiring, on the dean's search committee a few dean searches back. He's been really, really engaged with the law school, and he has a very thriving, successful practice in FDA law with a focus on medical devices. So he is he's at Hogan, and he has this amazing practice, works very closely with lots of developers of medical devices. When COVID started, he was involved in trying to bring out some of the home testing kits for COVID that are now starting to become available. So he does really interesting work there, and obviously knows FDA law very well and has lots of contacts with the FDA. So he's been very supportive of helping grow health law at GW. But it's been a challenge for the last several years because we just don't have enough of a faculty in health law, although, with our new dean, who has a PhD in public health and a deep commitment to health law, health equity, health justice, we are really moving towards, I think, a more robust health law program. In fact, we just got ranked 20th in US News and World Report in health law. We didn't rank in health law before then, so I think the numbers will just go up and up. And we also have a very strong relationship with the School of Public Health, which we're, I think, trying to make even more of a marriage, so to speak, so that there's really going to be an integration of the education between the students at the School of Public Health and the law school, and maybe even start really cross-listing courses. So the Health Law Initiative is intended to, Health Law Initiative is sort of the first step towards building a program. And part of that Health Law Initiative involves the Kahan Fellows. And so the model that we've developed is to have 3Ls who do more of the work, more investment of time. They've come in as the 3Ls that we have this year. Obviously, everybody was new, but the 3Ls next year were 2L fellows this year. And they will sort of have the institutional memory so that we can have it going forward. We preserve that instead of kind of shifting it up every time. So the fellows work closely with me. We meet once a week to plan various activities, events. We've spent a lot of time this year. Well, let me just say, during a pandemic, there were some challenges figuring out. A lot of things happened in the university that restructured communications, that restructured IT. And so that had some impact on some of what we did. We were also starting up. So we have a website up now. All right, it's up, Sanchita. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look at it. So that was a lot of effort to get the website up, and that's something that we want to keep up to date. So the website, I actually let Sanchita talk about it in a moment because she has really worked closely with that. But keeping up to date about activities that we're doing at the law school, about opportunities for students, about conferences that they can go to, about competitions, writing competitions, moot court competitions, testimonials from students. We're hoping next year, this didn't really happen this year because of all the other things we were working on, but we're hoping that there will be opportunities for the fellows to do some blogging, to focus on areas within health law and policy that could be short pieces, sort of current, up to date. So it would be an opportunity to use your writing skills, research skills, and keep that sort of as a resource for people. We actually had two opportunities this past year. I do a lot of work, as many of you know, in biotechnology, and I have a relationship with BioNews, which is a site in the UK, and they invited students to write reviews of television shows. There was an HBO show on assisted reproductive technology. And so and then there was a sort of reality TV, kind of like The Bachelor, but it was trying to find a sperm donor for a woman who hadn't gotten married. And so I had two students write reviews of that. So opportunities like that, or just focusing on a particular area that's really pressing, emerging. So there are those opportunities. The other thing that we did, and it will be an annual thing, is the Health Law Expo, which I think some of you, maybe all of you, went to. And that involves recruiting faculty, not faculty, recruiting alumni ideally, but it doesn't have to be, but people in the field of health law. And so this is an opportunity to network, to develop relationships that we hope to cultivate over time with people in the area. And of course, with Zoom, we were able to bring in people from other areas like the Midwest. I don't think we had anybody from the West Coast. So that's a big thing. Organizationally, it was a little bit challenging with Zoom, although I think we figured out a way to work. Hopefully this would be live in person if we can be in person this fall. So that will be a big event. We also will bring in a distinguished speaker. And so planning and thinking about who that speaker will be. Doing at least one symposium. This year we did something on First Amendment, and it was probably more of a scholarly focus in that it was academics writing, and the pieces will all be published in the Journal of Law, Medicine, and Ethics. But we may do something that's less purely academically focused, so we can think and plan for that, so the fellows are involved in. And in this case, I had already set in motion the First Amendment conference, but there isn't a plan, so the fellows would have some input into thinking about which direction we go. It's possible we're talking about maybe doing a kind of workshop on health justice and having a competition. We'll see what funding looks like. So one of the pieces is that John Kahan funded us for this year, and I think he's very happy with how things went. So I suspect he will, I am almost 100% sure he'll fund us for next year. But possibly we can ask him for a larger gift to fund other things like a health justice, some workshop where we invite people to write papers and then offer a sort of prize to the academic paper that's the strongest. And so the fellows will be involved with that. And then the other thing we hope is for an opportunity for the fellows to be involved in mentoring bi-directionally. So one would be to try to connect fellows with alumni or practitioners in areas of their interest, and cultivate those relationships, but also to offer mentoring to students coming up in the 1L year and the 2L years, especially for the 3Ls, to help mentor the 2L students, so that, excuse me, I've got a very determined dog who wants to come in just a minute. So mentoring opportunities in both directions, because what we're really trying to do with the fellowship is give a professional opportunity for students interested in health law, really encourage them to start to make those connections, start thinking about what field they'd like to go into within health law. It doesn't have to be figured out while you're doing the fellowship, but also to really generate interest among students, because one of the things, it's sort of which comes first, the chicken and the egg. But if we can demonstrate to the faculty that there's a strong interest in health law, that helps get the faculty support behind growing the health law program. That also helps get the donors to give more money. And so but of course, the more we offer in health law, the more people are interested in health law. So it's sort of trying to do both things at the same time. And so that was part of the idea, was to get students really excited and interested in health law and to help expand the program. Am I forgetting anything, fellows? What have I left out?
Did you mention like social media?
No, I did not. Not surprisingly, that would be the one thing I'd forget, because they're always pushing me to do more social media. I'm not, reflecting my generation, I'm not as into the whole social media, but yeah. So when we have events, we have sort of active tweeting during the events, or tweeting any kind of developments within the initiative, and also Instagram. And so we're trying to keep that current. And so finding material, sort of substantive material, and thinking about what to write for that, short little snippets for Instagram is another piece for the fellows to do. So it's a sort of ongoing thing, but also active within certain events. And so what it means is that there will be kind of constant work throughout the semester, but there will be periods where it's a little more intense as we're ramping up for an event. For example, the First Amendment event, a lot of the fellows were involved. Some people had conflicts, but there were maybe four 4 or 5 who were there from the start of the conference till the end. So that was, a almost 6-hour commitment. So sometimes it's going to be long stretches like that. But there are only a few big events throughout the year. It's more, so you have to have some flexibility. And obviously we recognize that there are different kinds of demands and deadlines depending on what your year is, what's happening for the 2Ls, what's happening for the 3Ls. But it is, what did we say, a 3 to 6 hour commitment? Is that what we put in the flyer? Yeah. But you can't map it out perfectly. It's not like you clock in at the exact time. The weekly meetings are, one thing you'd want to count on. But otherwise it sort of depends on which part you're involved in, because we're distributing the work, trying to distribute the work. Not everybody's doing the exact same thing all the time. Have I forgotten anything else? I mentioned the conferences, right? But I think I didn't fully describe that there is funding both from this donor and also another donor to attend health law related conferences. Obviously, it's all been virtual, but a year ago we had that money. Akosia, did you go to Chicago for that conference?
Yes, I did go to Chicago.
Yeah, so there are potentially some opportunities for some conferences and some travel. It's going to depend on what the conference is. So those chances to start networking with people through conferences in those ways. So that's sort of the rough sketch of what this involves. I see there's a chat. Let me open that up. Oh, that's for the health law link. So do any of you have questions? Or would actually, it might be useful for each of the fellows to just say a little bit about their experience and what they did, maybe before we have questions. So why don't we start with Akosia and Sanchita as the 3Ls?
Yeah, so as many of you know, I was the president of Student Health Law Association this year. And I think my biggest role was just making sure that the Kahan fellows and SHLA and also If, When, How were working together to create programming for students. We hosted a lot of our typical events like private sector panels and public sector panels, but then we also added a health law info session, and we did a virtual movie screening this year. So a lot of my role was involved in that, and also just making sure that we had enough practitioners for the health law expo, which was a really great networking opportunity. And I'm so jealous of you guys. You'll get to actually do it in person and not on Zoom. And that'll just be a great way to really get to know practitioners. So I would say that was my biggest role. I lent support to people that was doing more of the tech stuff. That was not my area of expertise. And Cheetah and Kathy did a lot of that work, but I always gave my input for things like that. Yeah.
Sanchita?
Thanks for that. Yeah. So along those lines, I did some similar stuff. But I guess before I talk about that, I think one thing that I would like to emphasize also is that the fellowship is a really cool opportunity to kind of work with other schools. So, the med school, the public health school. We did an asthma study with the nursing school. So it's a really interesting way to kind of have an interdisciplinary approach to health law. And then the second thing that I guess I would want to highlight before I go into some of the stuff that I worked on is that it's a really awesome opportunity to kind of make it what you want in a sense. So, Professor Suter was open to all of our ideas throughout the year, which is awesome. So, anything we would kind of pitch, it was kind of on us to take the initiative and kind of do it. So, we were able to create a new website. We were able to create Twitter and Instagram and kind of market and do a lot of promo through that, which is really cool. So, if you have any ideas for next year, I would really encourage you to put them out there. And then, you never know, they could be implemented, which is really cool. So some of the things that I got to work on, so I worked a lot on the website. So a lot of the fellows kind of created these Google Docs for each of our pages. So if you go on the website now, you'll see an About Us section, which showcases Professor Suter and John Kahan and a little bit about the Health Law Initiative. And then we also have a section for all of the Kahan fellows. And then we have an academic section, which talks about our concentration in health law, the degree offerings and clinics. And underneath that, we'll have a lot of the student testimonials. So, you know, a lot of the students did the domestic violence project, the clinic, and then the health rights clinic and the vaccine injury litigation clinic. I think G did that one. So, you know, you can ask her any questions you have about that. But it's really cool because we get to showcase the different opportunities that we have at the law school. And then also under student opportunities, you know, the writing competitions that Professor Suter mentioned, additional outside fellowships that you can apply for. So it's a really great resource for not just internal con fellows, but anyone who's kind of looking to apply to other opportunities. You can direct them to our fellowships and skill competitions and student groups. And then also the website's kind of in progress, so we still have some areas that we're working on, such as like under news and events, we're going to have these community squares that gives you a little bit of an inside look into what we're doing here at GW. So there will be one, for example, is Kathy and Ecosia, because they've placed first place in the UMD Health Law competition, which is awesome. And then another one is Professor Suter's installation ceremony. Another is Daniel Dawes as our distinguished speaker. And then we have areas of like faculty in the news and past and as well as upcoming events. And then another thing that I think is really cool is if you scroll to the bottom of our website, we have our Twitter account and our Instagram account both embedded onto the page. So anything that you all will be working on next year, you get to post here. And I think it's just an awesome way to kind of stay up to date with current events. And then also we work a lot like with SHLA, like Akosia mentioned, which is great because we get to post not only Confellow stuff, but also SHLA events on here. And so that's kind of the gist of the website. And then throughout the year, we did a lot of, event planning. So we had a lot of flyers that we created and a lot of graphics. And so, that's another thing that's pretty cool. If you have any ideas, you can kind of pitch them. So if you go on the website, we got to create the website banner that's up there now. And then we also got to create the GW Health Law logo that we use for a lot of our promos. And it's now on one of the tumblers that we give out as like a tchotchke. So that's also pretty cool. But yeah, if you have any questions about any of that, let me know and I'm happy to answer them.
Sanchita's being too modest. She designed the web banner. I just want to be clear here. She did a lot of the web designing. Because communications was decentralized, it was a lot more efficient for us to do a lot of things ourselves. And thank God we had somebody who was interested and good at doing that sort of thing. So who knew that artistic skills would be relevant to health law?
No, everyone pitched in, but yeah, it's pretty fun to kind of use other skills, which is also a cool thing about this fellowship is that it's not all education. You get to bring in your perspective on health law, and that will be something, if we implement blogs next year, that's something that you get to do on a more personal level is talk about issues that you care about specifically in health law.
Yeah, and I should point out, the fellowship really draws on a lot of different kinds of skills. We obviously don't expect everybody to have each person to have all of those skills. We're trying to find the balance of skills, but there will be substantive parts of it, but there's also event planning aspects, coming up with run of show, just sort of thinking through the logistics. And while that may not always seem substantive, these could be really useful in many ways when you get into practice. Who knows what you end up doing, but these kinds of skills can be really useful. And then the networking, the being able to call people that you don't know, to start to establish those relationships, to explain to them what the events are about. Those I think will be really useful to all of you. So it's both helping the law school, but also giving you a chance to do the networking and professional development that will kind of put you in a really nice position when you go out to look for jobs, because you'll have experiences and this recognition that other students won't have. So great. You've had a chance to meet two of the three L's. And so now you have the three 2Ls. So I guess alphabetically, I'll let Kathy go first.
Sure, happy to. So I'm Kathy. I'm currently a 2L Con Fellow. And this year, like Professor Suter was mentioning, the 3Ls took on a lot more of the directional roles, and the 2Ls kind of took on more of the supportive roles to kind of fulfill everything that was going on at the moment. So I worked a lot with Sanchita on a lot of the creative materials that we came up with. And this ranged anywhere between giving feedback on the flyers she was making, on the banners she was making, on the the health law logo that Sanchita actually made for the initiative as well. All of that required like just a lot of back and forth and fine tuning. And that's really something that I missed coming into the legal profession, is that creative aspect side of things. So it was great to kind of do more of that as well. And then on the other side of things, I worked a lot on logistics for a lot of the run of show that we put on. And what this just means is that you go into a lot more detail about how events are going to be run, especially virtually. You need to kind of keep a stricter timetable than you would if it was in person and everyone's just listening to the speaker talk. So that really helped inform a lot of my experience this year. On top of that, I work closely with Fucosia as part of the Student Health Law Association, where we put on a lot of the events together. So that also involved going out, looking for speakers, and kind of just supplementing the Kahan Fellows and the Health Law Initiative with other organizations as well.
Thank you. So I guess Heather is next alphabetically.
Sure. So yeah, similar to what Kathy is saying, we kind of took the initiative from the 3Ls and supported as needed. So things like in the fall, we had our health law, I guess, career expo. So having a background in, so I work with IFWA and HOW, reproductive health groups, as well as my background is in, sorry, there's stuff going on over here, civil rights law. So reaching out and finding people for all those events, coordinating with them. Sometimes people couldn't do it, so finding even more people and collaborating in that way. I think initially when we had thought about doing things like blogs, there was a lot of brainstorming around like what different topics could be, so that hopefully coming into next year, we'll be able to do some really interesting stuff in that area. We did an event with Daniel Dawes. So one thing was just coming up with people to be, what was it, the like distinguished speakers. So a lot of just like brainstorming, finding out. I like Daniel Dawes was somebody I had definitely thought of and encountered in the past in previous work. And so finding a bunch of people that would be interesting in that space. And luckily enough, that happened to be someone that really worked for us. I'm doing, logistical support. So for all the different events, doing support, some things like we would come up with like sample questions for during the events, if there were extra questions that were needed, making sure at different events that you were like the contact person, if the moderator had any questions, doing technical support, even during the events. There was an event where one of the speakers couldn't fit, like she, Professor Suter's laughing because she like lost the Zoom link. You'll encounter a lot of people who it may be some of their first time in some of these technical situations. And so some of it's just helping them along in that area and spot troubleshooting in those times. But it's really cool because you're working directly with a lot of professionals. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, just a lot of different support as needed.
Yeah, Heather was extremely patient and helpful for that because of course it was like right before she was supposed to speak. And so she was a little stressed out and Heather was very good with her. G?
Hi, everyone. My name's G. I'm a 2L. And, you know, like the other 2Ls have said, we played more of a supplement role, and the 3Ls obviously did a lot of the legwork. I guess that's how you say. But I want to share actually how excited I am for you guys to potentially join us, because I think maybe the Kahan Fellows can relate. When you actually meet every Friday, 8 a.m., it doesn't feel exciting. But now that, you know, it's not 8 a.m., like I got to see you guys, and I feel actually really excited about what's to come. And what I mean by that, I sound like an advertisement, but I really am. And the reason why I'm excited is actually because, you know what Professor Suter just said, we weren't even on the top 20 list of health law, and now we are. And of course, that has a lot to do with Dean Matthew and the school like curriculum itself. But I think we may add to that. We are actually part of something bigger. We're getting interest. We're having all these events lined up for the students. So being a part of that is actually exciting. And I think maybe of more interest to you is I want to share the symbiotic relationship you get from this fellowship. And what I mean by that is you give a lot of your time and effort, but you also gain a lot that you can use on a lot of different levels. So for one thing, I haven't sought out actively, but I know that if I have any questions or if I need guidance or advice, I can reach out to Professor Suter more easily, and also with the other 3L fellows as well, which you would be able to. If a 2L asks any of us 3Ls, we'd be happy to help you. Another aspect is, aside from mentoring, it also helps with honestly job searches or job applications, interviews. I know for OCI, it was very difficult in many ways, but especially if you're interested in a career in health law, it stands out if you have that you're a con fellow. So this is some things that are common sense to all of us, but I just want to highlight to say you do give a lot of your time, but you gain a lot of really, meaningful things. Knowing that you're helping your law school, improve in the stats department, but also like your friends, and also knowing that you're gaining a lot of meaningful stuff for yourself as well. That's just what I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I mean, this is a really exciting time at GW, not just the law school, but the university, because if we really do kind of collaborate with the School of Public Health, we're drawing on the strengths of two really, really fine schools within the university. And since you just made this point several times, but to be at a school where you have a strong law school, a strong School of Public Health, a medical school, a nursing school, in the nation's capital with access to policymakers, just the opportunities for people in health are pretty vast and unparalleled. And so there's the growth that's happening. And my vision of this is that the con fellows, and not just the con fellows, anybody who comes out of GW who's focused on health law and policy, that it's a community that we're building. And it's a relationship that continues beyond the 3 years that you're here at the law school, and that I will be tapping all of you once you graduate to bring you back and say, be part of mentoring and part of helping to grow the school. And I hope that the engagement in the health law growth will make you all more inclined to want to continue those relationships, which only strengthens the school further and helps students advance and enter the field. So I think it is an exciting time right now. All right, so that's a lot of background. So do you have any questions? And feel free, we're a small group, you can just speak up, if you need to raise your hand.
I had a question. I was wondering if any of the current fellows could speak to like I know that like G is a writing fellow. I don't know if any of the other ones are like writings fellows, dean's fellows, have other things that took up a good chunk of their weekly time, and if they could just speak a little more to how they balanced all of those things.
Okay. Kathy is also a writing fellow. Shout out. But yeah, I've obviously, even if you're not a writing fellow, law school students, we do a lot. But just to answer your question, I did writing fellow, I did a clinic and some other things, but the con fellowship, the 3 to 6 hour time limit, or not time limit, sorry, the effort that you spend to be a con fellow was not overbearing. And I didn't feel that was such a huge time commitment compared to my other time commitments. So if you're worried about, if I have too much on my plate, I would say that the con fellowship was the least of my worries. Not saying the work wasn't valuable or hard or meaningful. I'm just saying that I don't think that's something that's too worrisome compared to your other commitments. But maybe Kathy, you can share some perspectives.
Yeah, sure. Disclaimer, I like to do a lot of things at once, and I do that. In the fall, I was doing Con Fellows, Student Health Law Association, a 1 credit mock trial competition, journal, and then an internship not for credit on top of that. So it's 15 credits plus internship plus extracurriculars, right? Don't recommend that. However, I think all of it comes down to is how you manage your time and how you plan things out. So I know personally myself, I like to know schedules ahead of time. So I block off times to work on specific projects or for specific organizations. And just by doing that, that kind of helps me keep track of what I'm doing and also just feel more organized and in control of the activities I'm involved in, as opposed to them controlling me. So in terms of whether or not it's manageable, I think it really depends on how you like to organize and how many things you like to do.
I should just add one thing, which is that it's not a guarantee because the funding hasn't been set for, continuously. But in a perfect world, the idea is if it goes well with the 1Ls, with the 2Ls, that they would advance on to be the 3Ls. They would be paid more and they would work more. So you would also want to think about, are you going to want to invest in the greater time? It's not a perfect, the payment's about 3 times more. So we're trying to balance the workload accordingly. But you would want to think about, are you prepared to invest an even greater chunk of time in your 3L year? Because the goal is to have that institutional memory so that the 2Ls who have been supporting the 3Ls can come in and know what needs to be done as the 3Ls.
Yeah, I'll echo Kathy's point that I think organization is kind of huge. So, even this semester, I have 7 classes that are 15 credits, like mostly seminars. So it's a huge, it's a full schedule. And then I also have a full-time internship and then fellowship and a nonprofit. So it's a lot at once. But I think that if you manage your time wisely, it's completely doable, and it's also malleable in terms of when you want to do the work. So it's not like, unless there's a hard deadline, it's not like you need to submit something at Monday by 5 p.m. You can work on it if you have some additional time on a Sunday or, Monday morning, whatever works best for you. So I think that's the best part about this because, with an internship, it's generally 9 to 5 and it's not as malleable. So in terms of flexibility, this is actually something that will give you that flexibility. Obviously, disclaimer for when there are huge events, some weeks you'll be working a little bit more than others, but even during those weeks, the time that you actually put in, it's flexible unless there are last minute meetings or something like that, which isn't, it's pretty rare, I would say. The one constant would be the weekly meetings with all of the con fellows, which is nice because then you get to kind of know what work to anticipate for the following week and you can set your schedule accordingly.
Yeah. And with 6 fellows, obviously somebody can't come in every week and go, I've just got too much on my plate, I can't do it, right? I mean, that would be a problem. But if there really is something that is pressing, for example, if you're going through OCI or just there's ways in which we can have some flexibility for what's going on in people's lives. As Sanchita said, it's not set in stone, must be exactly these hours, except obviously if there's an event, then you do need to be at the event and that's not negotiable, but there's some flexibility.
I have a question. So I'm going to be a 3L. Are you mainly looking for rising 2Ls to come into as newcomers into the position and not so much 3Ls because the current 2Ls will fill those positions, or is it open to everybody, 2Ls and 3Ls?
Yeah, I mean, we are pretty much just looking for the 2Ls because of that idea of, the institutional memory, because you're only here for a short period of time. So there is that challenge. It's not a perfect system, but, at least where we are right now. Any other questions or comments from anybody?
I just want to say I hope you apply. Oh, sorry, Sanchita.
Oh, no. Yeah, sorry. I know most of you here, but just a quick poll. How many of you are 1Ls and how many of you are 2Ls? Okay, got it.
Yeah. And this isn't necessarily the entire universe. I don't know, if if everybody wanted to come to it, they might have thought the flyer was fairly self-explanatory.
The only thing I and Professor Cedar, you can answer this, but I was just thinking in terms of like applications, if in the event there are not enough applications, then maybe it's something that we consider pulling into the 2L pool. So maybe, if you're interested, just keep us posted. And
that's a good point. I think that is definitely a good point. I mean, I think the idea would be to have, but if there weren't enough applicants and we had enough, if we had 2Ls, it's not out of the realm of possibility. But the model that we had imagined was the 3 2Ls and the 3 3Ls.
Also, just a side. Oh, sorry, go for it, Kendall.
Sorry, CJ. I was just gonna ask if there's a preference for how long the personal statement should be.
I think a page or two. It doesn't have to be. It's not really. I didn't put a page limit because it was really more just what you felt you needed to say. But it's not a long essay, not a super long essay, because people are going to have different kinds of experiences, and so I don't want to. But I would say that they were typically last year. 1 to 2 pages.
Yeah, I know that personally. For myself last year, I think I did 1 page single spaced. And that covered both my interest and then whether or not I was bringing any skills with me to the fellowship and how I could apply those.
Yeah, and so now that you've heard what the fellowship entails, I think that can give you a sort of frame of reference and thinking about what to draw from in your experiences, skills, interests, because we're trying to get diversity in many senses of the word, and including skills, areas of interest within health law. So give some thought. You don't necessarily have to put this in your statement, but some thought to where within health law and policy you'd like to focus. It's not a commitment. Doesn't mean you're signing your life away for this particular area, but just, it would be nice to have a kind of representation of the different areas of health law as much as possible. So think a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, and I think I had gotten a few questions in general about the format. I think last year when I applied, I kind of wrote my personal statement in the form of a cover letter, if I remember correctly. So I think that would be okay. Professor Cedar, you can weigh in and let me know if you have any thoughts.
I'm not gonna be sort of a stickler about it must be an X form and this font and all of this, just basically communicating the message. So whether it's a cover letter, or whether there's a brief cover letter, and then you said that here's the statement, here's the resume, here's the transcript, it's just conveying the information. So lots of flexibility in how you do that. Ideally, as few typos as possible. So, that part, but in terms of what format, I don't really have a strong feeling.